Abodes, the official podcast of Toronto Thelema. Exploring, if you will, practical philosophy, from the science and the workings of the mind to spirituality, esotericism, and magic. Stooping down, dipping my wings, I came into the darkly splendid abodes. Liber 418, The Vision and the Voice, is the record of a series of Enochian visions scried by Aleister Crowley in 1900 and 1909 era Aethyrs. These visions are the most well-known example of putting John Dee and Edward Kelly's system of angel magic into practice. Michael and I will look at Aethyrs 9 and 4 and see how our deep dips to date aid us in understanding the angel's message.
Are we recording?
We are recording.
Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law.
Love is the law, love unto will.
Welcome to the program.
You took charge so adamantly there, and then
No, it's the stupid joke about, hey, we're on the radio. I just can't take myself seriously as a radio personality.
Today we're going to be looking at The Vision and the Voice.
Another new type of work for us. We're exploring a lot of new things this season. First fiction of the program this season. First
Nietzsche.
Was it the first? Yeah, first Nietzsche of the season, which I guess is its own type of literature. I was going to say, my instinct was to say, well, that falls under philosophy, but it just falls under Nietzsche, I guess. Yeah. First proper holy book analysis this season. And now even a different thing, doing a Class A-B document, doing a received teaching, a ritual record, a vision transcript. It has its own kind of character and type of difficulty. So, we're kind of all over the place. We looked at the 9th and 4th Aethyr, which in text message I keep calling the 9th and 3rd, stressing you out for no reason. But there's the 9th and 4th Aethyr of the Vision and the Voice. Yeah,
initially I was suggesting, or we were talking about doing the 4th and 3rd, and that's, I think, where the confusion came from. But it's basically, that was because we were looking at trying to build on the idea of the woman and Lilith and ideas pertaining thereto, throughout the Thelemic corpus and, tangential books and whatnot as well. But we discovered that it kind of makes sense to actually do this, the 9th and the 4th, because the 4th, it makes reference to the princess that comes into the vision of the 9th. And they both also, incidentally, Crowley always does these breakdowns in his commentary. So he'll do the very first footnote he'll give is based on the Enochian letters, which he'll give the astrological correspondences to, and then he'll do the Hebrew correspondences to those astrological correspondences, and the Hebrew letters he'll then get the gematria value and then riff off of that a little bit and that sort of thing. But in both cases, we have all the Aethyrs are named with 3 Enochian letters. These 2 Aethyrs are named with the first and last letters are both attributed to Leo in both cases.
Okay.
And then the medial letter, the center letter, is Paul Lind, as always. Oh, wait, no, that's Celebrity Squares, whatever the hell that is. Sorry.
Jesus, that's a deep cut. Holy smoke. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Paul Lind in the center
Hello.
square.
Hello! Oh my goodness. Pat Sajak, it's so nice to be here. Who hosted Celebrity Squares? It's not Sajak.
Yeah, who knows? Everybody remembers Paul Lind. Well, nobody remembers Paul Lind.
I don't. This is a lot of pretense that I'm pretending to remember Paul Lind. That's just my impression of your impression.
Yeah, exactly. Broken telephone of impressions. But yeah, so the medial letter for the 9th Aether is Sagittarius is attributed to.
Okay.
Conveniently enough, considering the way that you were just riffing off of what you opened the book randomly to.
Yeah.
And it was referring to the art card, and which is attributed to Sagittarius, yada, yada, yada. And the fourth Aether, the medial letter is attributed to Taurus.
Okay.
So we sort of have the art card and the Hierophant card, if we want to look at the attributions to those, both flanked by Leo, which is attributed to the Lust card.
Man. What was that fucking sound, Mike?
Thanks for your
Calm
contribution.
the hell down.
Oh yeah,
That's the sound of lust.
I've heard of that.
Wowie, wowie.
I remember what that was like.
Back when I was potent. So we do have a lot of commentary here. I don't want to, bogart the mic here, but we have the commentary that goes with it seems to be later stage Crowley at some point, because he will occasionally make references to Frater Achad.
Okay.
And both in positive terms and in cautionary terms. So it must be, it could be from various stages, like he may have gradually built up this commentary. He may have gradually sort of accumulated this commentary over the years, but he may have also just done it, Cefalù or post-Cefalù kind of thing. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't read all the details on it recently or anything like that.
So let's put this in a little bit of context. This is 1912. Is that right? The Vision and the Voice?
The Vision and the Voice? Yeah, I guess it was 1909,
1909. Okay, so, and then if we remember correctly, all the Akkad stuff we read 3 seasons ago, that was all from 1919, 1920, 1921. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it may have started in 1917. I think that's when he first made the Oath of the Abyss, and going into 1918, and then from there on,
So the commentary, at least portions of it, are at least 10 years removed from the
from the actual reception.
And for those who don't know what this book is, Crowley had received a bunch of Enochian material from the Golden Dawn, which he sort of explored in tangents throughout his life, did a little bit of it in Mexico at some point, and then nothing again for a long time. And he found himself during a period of dryness, wandering around North Africa somewhere with Victor Newberg. And they decided, just because they could, to try to get the rest of the Enochian Aethyrs and doing sex magic together with, I think, probably Crowley in the receptive position and Newberg as the operator / scribe, though I'm not 100% confident.
At least at one point,
that.
Crowley was in the receptive position for a specific working, for sure.
Yeah.
But it could be, it could have varied.
Well, this is all so much in Crowley's voice that I think if there's a dictator, he must be the one dictating.
Oh, absolutely, that's the case.
But it's confusing to me.
When you said receptive position, I was thinking sexually.
Sexually, yeah. No, they. I mean, in terms of like,
as the seer,
who's John Dee and who's Edward Kelly.
So Crowley was the seer in this case, and Newberg was the scribe. So it's mostly in Newberg's hand, and we actually have the manuscript, which has been published kindly by someone as well.
But then sometimes Newberg is called the scribe because he's doing scribe things, but that's one of Crowley's esoteric titles, so it blows my mind. I have a hard time keeping track of Suzu. But so there's this list of vision. There's this 30 visions of the 30 Aethyrs, printed without context, just received, and transmitted, and so you read the kinds of things that Crowley perceived when he was doing these operations in the desert, and it ends up being kind of by accident Crowley's Master of the Temple experience. He crosses the abyss about halfway through, 2/3 of the way through in the 10th Aether here. And so we're on the other side of the abyss, beginning in 9 and continuing on to number 4. Also interesting to notice is when you get copies of the Holy Books of Thelema, very often it's just Class A documents. This is Class AB. So Class A is like the Holy Books and Class B is the scholarship, but Class AB is the Holy Scholarship. And I think I always thought that was kind of a nebulous classification, like I didn't know what it meant. But it's both fully Class A and fully Class B. So these works are works of scholarship, but they are also to be regarded as holy books. So the fact that this and the Paris working are omitted from collections of holy books is a bit of a mistake, because they're fully Class A documents and should be taken seriously as our sacred texts. There was a publication called, I can't remember, but it's got a pink cover. It's a fairly, I'm feel embarrassed now because I wanted to pitch it specifically and then I brought the wrong copy. But there was a publication of the holy books. It's got a pink cover. It's called something else, but it's a sort of flimsy, like it looks like a dollar store thriller, like a drugstore thriller, but it's a full,
giallo.
But it's a full publication of the holy books, including Liber 418. So getting that correct, but still omitting the Paris working.
Yeah, and just for interesting clarification, hopefully it's interesting, but this is like a formal initiation to the Master of the Temple grade, with all the formal steps in place and that sort of thing. What had happened previous to this was, I believe it was in 1906, but could have been, just after that or something like that. George Cecil Jones recognized Crowley as a Master of the Temple, but Crowley refused to accept the title because he thought it would be presumptuous, and he felt like it was necessary to formally undergo the initiation rather than just accept it based on his experiences hitherto. So this is the formal initiation, and it includes, just before this Aether, the 10th Aether, Zax, which is also known as the Cursed Aether. That's where the infamous occurrence happens where him and Newberg confront Choronzon, and Crowley sits in the triangle of art, and Newberg sits in the circle, and so Crowley, they basically evoke Choronzon into Crowley, and so he ends up having to confront Choronzon on the physical plane. And this is having managed to get past that stage and now having crossed that abyss, as you mentioned.
Yeah, the knife fight concluded. they carry on. So how did you find this this time? Did you enjoy reading these?
These are very interesting because there's a lot of interesting stuff to pull out of it, but it's very dense and can be it's easy to read over it and not really completely grab everything. That's for sure. For instance, one of the first things we come across here in the 9th Aether is this song. It's like a song of reception as Crowley's entering the Aether. There's an angel. The angel of the Aether is essentially singing this song to him. It's like 7 verses, and there's a refrain. And these songs like this that happen in the Vision of the Voice, I usually find that they tend to be a little bit hard to, usually if I'm just reading it casually, I just sort of don't really necessarily get a hell of a lot out of them. I just pass on through them and that sort of thing. But sort of going over a little bit more for this was kind of fun because it's there's a lot more to delve into when you actually take the time to. Yeah,
it is a good distillation of the symbols by which we point at Master of the Temple too. This one, each verse of the song is sort of like a honorific for Crowley, bestowing more and more titles upon him. So what's happened is he's come through the abyss and on the other side picked up this tiny thread of blue light and is walking, he says, like as if on a razor's edge out of the abyss, because the success in abyss crossing is in dispersing your identity completely and having a moment of non-existence. While Choronzon is trying to feed you threads that seem interesting, you're not meant to follow them. You're meant to ignore them and attain a kind of samadhi that sort of seals you up and lets you be pulled across by the love of Babylon. So it's only by the finest thread of light that he's able to sort of, by walking this tightrope, this razor's edge, get through to the other side.
Yeah.
And on the other side, there's an army of soldiers waiting for him. They guard the abyss on either side, both in the 11th and the 9th Aethyr.
15th, there's, or it appears as well, but I could be thinking about that.
There's several armies, so you might be right, but these are specifically
just on
bookending
either side.
the abyss to keep Karanzan where he belongs. And so he's met by this army that's supposed to keep things from getting out.
Yeah.
And so a delegate needs to come down and make sure he's given safe passage. And so there's this song that honors him as a master of the temple. Who is this that come forth from the abyss, from the place of rent garments, the habitation of him that is only a name? Who is this that walketh upon a ray of the bright, the evening star? And we'll read the refrain later. Second verse, who is he that travelleth between the host, that is poised upon the edge of the Aethyr by the wings of Mot? Who is this that seeketh the house of the Virgin? The wings of Mot being like the wings of justice or something, right? The wings of balance. This is he that hath given up his name. This is he whose blood hath been gathered in the cup of Babylon. This is he that sitteth, a little pile of dust, in the city of the pyramids. Given up his name is important. A little pile of dust is important. Gathered in the cup of Babylon is important. And then remember in verse 1, Karanzan is called the habitation of him that is only a name. So we have this juxtaposition of only a name to given up his name.
Yeah.
And if people have been wondering why we've been talking about Twin Peaks, why would we talk about the George MacDonald book, Lilith, this idea, reading through this song should give you some clues, right? Like, think about Chet Desmond and Laura Palmer and all the coffee pots. Think about the people entombed under the cemetery in Crow's library, until the light of the Father of all kindle that death, until the breath touch that dry dust, until the ibis be revealed unto the crab, and the sixfold star becometh a radiant triangle. So it's the promise of, right now the masters of the temple are little piles of dust, but here we're given this idea that I've never thought about before of a resurrection to come when the light of the Father kindleth all death until the breath touches that dry dust. So the back third of the George MacDonald novel where the sleeping people wake up again, maybe. Anyway, you're the one who mentioned this. How am I doing? What do you want to talk about here?
Yeah, well, it's pretty good. I was going to mention that idea of like balancing only he who is only a name versus him who has given up his name. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you think about it, it's like by giving something a name, you're essentially sort of unifying it, so to speak. It's sort of like if you compare the idea of, if you have a human body and you cut it into pieces, you lose that unity. But like by referring to something as a unity, it implies a unity. Whereas Karanzan lacks that unity that the name gives it. When the master of the temple gives up that unity, gives up that naming to become nothing.
It's the first adult thing you're given when you're born, right? Mm. You come into the world as pure nefesh, just instincts and ideas. Just instincts. No training, no intuitions, nothing refined, and you're given this name under which all your experiences of your whole life will be subsumed,
Yeah. And important
it's
to that.
the title of your story. And when we were talking about Liber Semek, it was like the name of the angel, the letters of the name of the angel became all the incidents in your life forever, and every idea you've had, and every dream.
Yeah.
And so there's this the name is like the center of the ruach, right? And so if you can give up your ruach so much that you forget your own name, then you're in a good place.
Yeah, which is why it's like the phrasing of who is this that cometh forth from the abyss, from the place of rent garments is so nice as well, because the idea of rent garments, torn clothing, is like the idea of the personality being torn away.
Oh, yeah, pulling away the veils.
Yeah,
right?
pulling away just what you were talking about with the nefesh and the ruach, and these ideas of the things that we take for ourselves, but are actually, we're discovering, are not.
Mm-hmm. Dougie Jones. Forgetting one's own name is important.
Yeah.
And then also this idea here of this whisper here of the idea of a last judgment, of a resurrection, until the Father of all kindleth that death. Mm-hmm. We're not reading this whole book today, so I don't know, we can't say how that theme works throughout all 30 Aethers, but of the 2 sections we did read, this becomes important real fast. So it's something to notice this early on.
Yeah, and the idea of the ibis, and until the ibis be revealed unto the crab, it also has a footnote there for the commentary that refers it to, I think that's what refers it to Aether 15, where it's like there's the different tiers of adepts that are like the first tier sees God as a man, the second tier sees God as, going through these different interpretations of God as like a hawk or as a goat, and then we have a crab and an ibis in succession, and I think Crowley associates those with the crab with Bina and the ibis with Chokmah. So the ibis is kind of like the bird of Thoth or Hermes. So that makes sense with that. It occurs to me as well that the crab is Cancer, which is associated with Cheth, which is the path leading up to Bina.
Oh, cool.
And then the path leading up from Bina to Heather is Baith, which is the magician, Mercury, which is kind of another version, a reflection of Thoth as well.
Yeah, when you start doing these visions of the various Sephira, you think, oh man, I'm supposed to be in Saturn, and I'm getting all this sort of different kind of energy, like maybe, like in this example, like let's say I'm getting this Cancer energy, these must be breaks. Like I'm just, daydreaming or something and just having fun. And this isn't information at all. These are just, but then you look at your tree of life and you realize that those are maybe from connecting paths that feed into the Sephiroth. So it becomes important to know this map, right?
Yeah.
Like, especially when I'm doing anything lunar, I find that there's a lot of Saturnic shit that bleeds in, and it takes me a minute to go like, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I always think it's a mistake, and then I have to take a deep breath.
I find very much the same thing, yeah. Which is why it's nice to be able to, if you can, obviously you may have to assess things on the fly to whatever extent, but it's also nice to be able to assess things in hindsight, because you don't always know in the moment what you're dealing with. So there's a certain level of that. But and that's fun too, because it's like that. The idea of until the ibis be revealed unto the crab implies something, where you've got, if you did see it as those two paths, it's sort of like this crossing point going across the abyss there at that point on the tree. So kind of an interesting thing for meditation, and just like a lot of these other little passages as well. Like we had in verse 2, we had, who is this that seeketh the house of the virgin? That sounds pretty poignant as well, rife with potential implicit ideas and whatnot.
Yeah, what do you think it means?
Well, virgin, what comes to mind is the sign of the virgin, or the sign of Puella, is it's basically holding one hand across the breasts and one hand over the genitalia, and it's basically a representative of a kind of chastity, and that's attributed to the abyss, that sign.
Good. Also, we're about to see, once Crowley is admitted between, to snake his way between the ranks of the soldiers that guard the abyss, we're about to be invited into a palace that is the house of the ninth Aether.
Yeah.
And there are sort of levels as you zoom in and out, right? Like the palace is made up of these individual bricks that are different angels, and they're spears are lightning rods, and their breastplates are the scales of the skin of a woman who is also the palace, and the woman is a 12-year-old girl with these fine little golden
like a
hairs all
12-year-old
over
girl.
her body.
Yeah.
And so the house of the virgin is both a house and a virgin, maybe, if you want to think of literally what's happening in the
We
narrative.
have like that verse 6 is open wide your gates, O city of God, for I bring no one with me, meaning Nemo.
Yeah.
Sink your swords and your spears in salutation, for the mother and the babe are my companions. The mother and the babe. And that brings to mind the next sign, which is about for Bina, which is nursing a babe. And let the banquet be prepared in the palace of the king's daughter. Let the lights be kindled. Are not we the children of the light? Now that whole verse sounds a lot like, makes me think of the 9th degree of OTO, incidentally. But so I feel like you could kind of read into the symbolism in interesting ways that seems to imply a lot to do with these, well, I mean, we have the woman nursing the child hints at things and the idea that the palace is the princess and this sort of thing.
Well, open thy gates to me, you can also think of the collects from the Gnostic maths, let the gate of light be open and the babe catch life with both hands. If you know, you know.
Yeah, and let the lights be kindled. Are not we the children of the light? I couldn't help thinking, I wonder if that also is not just an allusion to that, but also the sons of light and the sons of light, and the daughters of light and the daughters of light. Who knows? Maybe this is Enochian stuff here, so could be an allusion to that.
And this is important here because it's breaking up some alchemical ideas that are often conflated, often seen as one thing. For this is the keystone of the palace of the king's daughter. This is the stone of the philosophers, the stone that is hidden in the walls of the ramparts. Peace, peace, peace unto him that is thrown therein. No, it isn't. I thought this was going to be where it said about how the red powder is the grinding up of the bones of Choronzon, and the stone of the philosophers was the distillation of the soul of the adept, and the water of and the elixir of life was the something else, but that's not what I should read before I speak.
Little bits like that can be easy to, they get a little bit mixed up. It's, there is still that kind of vision sort of style of things, similar to Liber 65, where it's, it goes from imagery to imagery and metaphor to metaphor a lot of the time. Not quite in the same way, but it can be similarly easy to mix, because I can't remember if that's in this Aether or if it's in the 4th Aether. But we have a description of the girl as you were describing, and then we have a lot of hailing of this princess, and it sounds a lot like I was saying it seems like this is the princess that is representative, possibly of the Shekinah, but like basically, if we're looking at Tetragrammaton, the way Crowley likes to describe it, we have the idea of the father, the mother, the son, and the daughter, and there's this magical formula that's of in great importance, that is the son raising the daughter up to the throne of the mother to awaken the eld of the All-Father. And this seems to be that daughter, the princess.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And she seems to have a lot of sort of identities. Sometimes she's called Persephone or Betula or Malka. So like Malka is queen, and Betula is like Baden or daughter, so she's serving both functions. And I don't remember whether it's here or whether it's in the 4th Aether, but specifically she's like the daughter of
Babylon and the All-Father.
Babylon the All-Father, and then there's some relationship with the king as well. So there is this layer of this fourfold family, like you're saying, how that's all resolved and kind of brought up. There's also here in verse number 7, the poets have feigned songs about her, and the prophets have spoken vain things, and the young men have dreamed vain dreams. But this is she, that immaculate, the name of whose name may never be spoken, though thought cannot pierce the glory that defendeth her, for thought is smitten dead before her presence. Memory is blank, and the most ancient books of magic are neither words to conjure her nor adorations to praise her. Will bends like a reed in the tempest that sweep the borders of her kingdom, and imagination cannot figure so much as one petal of lilies whereupon she standeth in the crystal lake in the sea of glass. So she is all three, this concatenation of angels. She is the army that they've passed between. She's also the house of the princess and the princess. Like, you imagine the palace of the princess being the place where the princess lives, but in this case, the palace literally is the princess. And Crowley says in verse 3, it is impossible to say anything about her. So in Kabbalah, we have this distinction between knowledge, which is like the false sephira of Thoth that it no longer is on the tree, but also then Bina is understanding, is that correct? And Chokmah is wisdom. And so she's this idea, Thelema has this, is like trans-rationalist, right? You learn all these rules of logic because you have to be a logical person to think, but also to understand the limits of logic, to think about what's beyond knowledge, and specifically the crossing of the abyss is to partly to acknowledge the limits of your knowledge. And so there's a way in which this unspoken quality she has is the quality of wisdom, which makes her, maybe Sophia as well, right? And so we've done a lot of work recently with the Chaldean oracles and with the Pistis Sophia, trying to understand how Thelema could claim to be a Gnostic movement by looking at the Gnostic text that Crowley had access to, and I think we've had limited success. But now that we know those things and we go to these kind of like more sacred Thelemic books, we can start to see parallels between the I don't know what to call them, the parables, the allegories, the storytelling in here, and the Gnostic fables as well. So you're right you're right to point to the Shekinah, the feminine power, the Holy Spirit, that voice that whispers to you, but also something that transcends that voice, the spirit of wisdom, and then it seems like she actually is the world.
The soul of the world, so to speak, and then
which makes her, and I'll remind the audience later about that story of Pistis Sophia and the lion-faced king and the lion-faced power, and how that was a story of the creation of the world. So to have this ineffable wisdom being the grounds of existence is also has a Gnostic feeling about it as well. Yeah,
and comparing it to that formula of Tetragrammaton that I was talking about, taking the daughter and placing her on the throne of the mother. The mother is seated in Bina, in understanding. The daughter is Malkuth, the kingdom. And so placing her on the throne of Bina would make sense. It's above the abyss, so it's trans-rational. And that's where we have like this, you cannot grasp, with the mind what she is and her beauty and all these things. Quick question for you.
Yeah.
You're referencing verse 7 and I think you said verse 3. You may have meant note 3, but I'm kind of curious because we're using two different versions, two different printings of the Vision and Voice. You're using the Jim Eshelman.
Yeah, I have Jim Eshelman's Visions and Voices, and sometimes if paragraphs aren't numbered, I will go through and number them.
Oh, I see.
And
it helps if everybody else can compare, I guess.
Here they're numbered in the text already, so I thought maybe they would be in yours too.
No, they're not numbered. That's why I didn't want to be confusing because mine doesn't have those.
So if other people's don't have them, then
they might think you're talking about the song.
Don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, song. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah. So if you just go through and number all the, so the whole song looks like it's in one paragraph, so that still counts as paragraph 1 or verse 1, and stupidly the first two paragraphs are numbered 0, 0, and 0. This is the least. Jim, fuck off, Jim. What the shit?
We were talking about that, like Jim Eshelman is like hyper rationalistic. Speaking of, he likes to have things very organized. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but it's like hyper organizational. I guess I should say.
Yeah. Jim Eshelman might be Karanzan. What do you mean? Paragraph 1 is 0.0.
But it's cute.
Oh, adorable. This is. I'm going to stop doing this because it's not helpful to anyone who doesn't have this obscure,
that specific rearrangement of things.
Jesus. What the hell was I saying?
Well, I guess
maybe it's your turn.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, we were talking about this these paragraphs on the subject of the beauty of this princess and how she's beyond like the trans-rational ideas and that sort of thing. And we're working our way towards where the angel is going to be essentially explaining to Crowley as sort of the representation on behalf. Sort of, he's like the emissary of humanity at this point, where he's being reprimanded that, well, you've trained your vision very well, and you've trained your ears a little, but the rest of your senses you've barely trained at all. And so he's the stand-in for humanity. So all of us, we kind of like, it's an urging that we train these other levels in order to engage with the Aethyrs in more depth. So and then it's going to have like it's going to get into an explanation or an exposition of the way in which to invoke the Aethyrs, which I guess at the time, in the context, Crowley ended up employing, and either was employing or added to the way that he was approaching things. And I think they're probably good tips for us as well. Just like, where I think it's common enough to take this text and sort of think of it as a nice novel example, but I think that's a mistake, and it underestimates the role that this has. It's almost like an expansion on the Book of the Law in a lot of ways, and it also has a lot of really valuable information that I think wasn't just to Crowley, but is like, was given to Crowley because it thereby was spread to everybody else.
I'm not seeing this section on the admonishment of the angel to train his, sense of smell and sense of taste and stuff.
I'll read it.
Is that that's the ninth Aethyr, is it?
Yeah, I'll read it. So basically, it's right after that sort of talking about the princess, and it's saying, "Holy, holy, holy art thou, and blessed be thy name forever, unto whom the aeons are but the pulsings of thy blood. I am blind and deaf, my sight and hearing are exhausted." Presumably this is now Crowley speaking. "I know only by the sense of touch, and there is a trembling from within me. Images keep arising," and it's basically talking about how there's like all these sort of beautiful images, ivories and porcelains and things like that are just sort of like lower cast out reflections, so to speak, of this deeper inner beauty. And he says, "I cannot bear the vision. A voice comes, I know not whence. Blessed art thou who hast seen and yet has not believed. For therefore is it given unto thee to taste and smell, and feel, and hear, and know by the inner sense, and by the inmost sense, so that sevenfold is thy rapture."
Yeah, very good.
And I think I may be mixing it up with Aether 4 if it doesn't get into the what I was thinking.
Well, this points at the same thing in a way that I didn't notice before, so this is still helpful to acknowledge it. And we're getting close to something, but let's just talk about it now. This idea of all these delicate and beautiful things that are cast out from her, but it is the shells of the dead that is the earth.
Yeah,
and so in the Pistis Sophia chapter, I think 29 and 30, when we get the story of the creation of this lion-faced power that's so dangerous to Sophia, there's some element of it that has to do with something called the self-willed, emanating from himself, a lion-faced power, which then gathers all the powers of the aeons below and makes war upon Sophia and hollows her out, and she becomes a lion-faced king. So you now have these two deities that are lion-faced, and I can't remember which one, whether it's the thing made out of Sophia's power or the thing made out of the self-willed's power, but Jesus calls one of them Yaldabaoth, of whom I have spoken to you many times, and Yaldabaoth is specifically the creator of creation. And so to have Sophia emanating maybe all these like beautiful but dead, hollow things like seashells and porcelains and you know, like literal shell, like frames, like pottery, like literal shells that become the whole world. It's again this sort of Gnostic thing where you know, this perfect unspeakable wisdom creates the whole world by speaking about things, but those things that are spoken about are kind of, they don't have souls because they lack the inexpressible quality. And so this is the world that we live in. And again, probably part of the reason Crowley wants us to read Kant, the difference between the objects of nomina and phenomena, the things in themselves versus our sense perceptions of them, or something like the souls reside in the things of themselves, not in our perceptions of the universe. So much of these things that seem, you know, simple or esoteric or like, you know, just like juxtapositions for the sake of just juxtapositions or just wordplay. After you've done 5 seasons of a podcast like this and really understood the philosophical approach that we're taking and the literary tradition that we're in, these little bits of poetry point at things that become so important. I think, honestly, I've read this a lot of times, and I think just focusing on these 2 Aethyrs this week, it's like the first time I've sort of had a coherent understanding of, you know?
That's what I mean, you know, it's easy to brush over them without digging into them the same way as we do in this context. So the lesson here is to make a podcast and have 5 seasons of it. So
So then you can maybe begin.
But it's true though. I mean, that was one of the things with that episode we did on the Pistis Sophia. I think I was part of the reason I was annoyed by it is because it feels like it's tangentially going off into fantasy land about, you know, creating like fantasy worlds and fantasy characters and all this sort of thing. And that's the kind of thing that I just get annoyed with because people in the occult tend to do that quite a bit. And I feel like it's a distraction from a lot of the work and a lot of the stuff that we're trying to do. And this can function in the same way when you're reading the visions here, because it's very easy to just see it as, you know, flowery imagery in imaginary lands and all this sort of thing. But yeah, when we're looking at it with all the stuff, the context that we've generated over all the readings and stuff like that, we end up actually pulling out of it something a little bit more interesting than that.
Apologists like to ask big questions of agnostics, right? Like, oh, if you have a scientific worldview, like how does something come from nothing? You know, like where does matter come from? You know, like, you know, they ask these big, deliberately unanswerable questions so that they can then fill the hole with Jesus, and it doesn't.
Thy rod, thy staff.
What's comfort me, comfort me.
Fill that hole. Sorry, continue.
Well done. And I think your frustration with the mythologizing is that it doesn't follow, right? We can agree that we don't understand certain things. That doesn't mean that we just arbitrarily fill that lack of understanding with one very specific story. You know, it can't be, how does matter come from nothing? Oh, God did it. That explains it. Because it still doesn't. Like, how did God did it? But when you begin to piece together a metaphysics that comes from somewhere, like in this case, from epistemology, like the way that we think, let's assume that has something to do with the way our perceptions of the world have programmed us to think. So maybe there's some way in which we can say, okay, the mechanism of thinking reflects in the real world somehow, you know, like, oh, okay, we have these sense perceptions that aren't, anyway, when you start to build up from the beginning, like with David Hume and then to Kant, and then see the way that philosophers, like all the way from the Gnostic movement and before, Plato's cave, and then Crowley here, are talking about the same thing, are talking about this inexpressible quality of existence and trying to find a way to express it.
Yeah.
Then it becomes much, much less frustrating because even though the mythology may seem like storytelling, it points at something profound about what meditation can do, what magic can do, and what we think and there's a common thing being pointed at that then sort of starts to become more real because of how many different groups of people inside and outside of various philosophical traditions have put up similar symbols to describe similar emotional or intellectual states or something.
Yeah. So we end up, and then that for that reason as well, this also functions nicely to express different things to different people at different times and that sort of thing, potentially.
This is nice. A voice comes, I know not whence. Blessed art thou who hast seen, and yet hast not believed. For therefore it is given unto thee to taste, to smell, to feel, to hear, to know in the inner sense, and by the inmost sense, so that sevenfold is thy rapture. And so this is like the story of Thomas or something as well, right? Like just because, Thomas, by doubting the resurrection of Christ, is then allowed to put his hand inside the wound, which maybe doesn't seem like a nice reward, but by doubting the experiences of your senses and by the stories that are just told to you, and by investigating them with a kind of zeal, you come to a fuller understanding and a greater experience of what is inexpressible or something.
Yeah, so we have a reversal of that. Makes me think if there's like some evil anti-Jesus out there somewhere who was like, please, to prove it, place your hand in the wound. And when he does so, he says, ha, leprosy.
Yeah, there's a guy going around just giving everyone leprosy.
Yeah. And so Crowley's pushing himself past his abilities here. He's saying, and now I have conquered the fatigue by will, after dealing with a bout of fatigue after these experiences and trying to perceive these things. And by placing the showstone upon my forehead, it sends cool electric thrills through my brain so as to refresh it and make it capable of more rapture. And now I behold her. And we don't have more of the vision of the woman, but we have instead an angel coming forth and bringing him into, it says, one of the 9 towers, as if these 9 towers had appeared before. I don't know if that was in a previous Aether, but I don't think we had 9 towers appear in this particular Aether previously. He ends up being shown a map of the Aethers being mapped out on the Tree of Life, which you were sort of saying the way that Eshelman maps them out on the Tree of Life is much more simplified and doesn't really fit this schema. Incidentally, I guess if we look at the map for that, the copy that I have is the Equinox 4.2, and it's printed by Weiser, and it's got the Paris working and all this, like the Bart spell working and whatnot. But one of the things it has is it has some diagrams and stuff, so it actually has a handy diagram laying out the way that this map of the Aethers on the Tree of Life would be. And the Aether number 9 would be attributed to Malkuth, and then Aether 4 ends up being to the paths that it ends up describing at one point, which Crowley says the enumeration of those paths is the enumeration of one of the spellings of Aiwaz.
Oh, cool.
That's kind of fun. Yep, so we have a description of the process for invoking the Aethers.
Yeah, I wanted you to get to this, so that's great. Thanks for noticing.
Yeah, so I'm going to read, I guess I'll just read it. Basically, the main thing is the angel is quoting from the Book of the Law, saying the first 9 are infinitely holy, the first 9 Aethers. And remember that we're entering the Aethers starting from the 30th and working our way down to 1. He says, wisdom says, be strong, then canst thou bear more joy. If thou drink, drink by the 8 and 90 rules of art. So the idea being that you have to really refine yourself with discipline in order to properly and more fully experience the Aethers. But Crowley's note breaks down the process that he ends up giving for a rule, because he says, 1,001 times shalt thou affirm the unity, and bow thyself 1,001 times, and thou shalt recite thrice the call of the Aether, and all day and all night, awake or asleep, shall thy heart be turned as a lotus flower unto the light, and thy body shall be the temple of the rosy cross. Thus shall thy mind be open upon the higher, and then shalt thou be able to conquer the exhaustion, and it may be, find the words, for who shall look upon his face and live? And Crowley explains the chapter that affirms the unity is from Surah Ikhlas, which is Arabic pertaining to the Quran, which is Kul hu Allahu ad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakun lahu kufuwan ahad. And the Arabic for that is, say he, God, is one. God is the absolute source. He does not beget, and he is not begotten, and nothing is like unto him. Crowley continues, between each recitation, the seer halted and bowed, referring to himself. And this practice was performed during the day's march, the 1,001 recitals being divided into 13 sections. A further affirmation of the unity, for 13 equals achad, which is the Hebrew word for one. And he would take short rests in between each of these 13 sections.
That's really good. And the reason is that Crowley has now crossed the abyss. He's a master of the temple. The abyss is the 10th Aether. He wants to finish getting the rest of them, and he doesn't have the grade entitled to go any further than he is. So he's doing these he's got these prescriptive rigmaroles to go through to deepen his spiritual contact, so he can get up above above his grade level and get the rest of the Aethers for the sake of writing the book. Which is and that's great help to us too. I also wonder about the prayer that is called the Shema, I think it's pronounced. Shema Israel, Yod He Vav He, Elohim Echad, or something like that, which would be like, hear now Israel, the Son is the Father, God is one, or like, or the Lord is God, God is one.
Yeah.
And also more familiar to Thelemites, maybe Ararita, which would be like Achad Rosh Shakadutho Tumaratu Akad, which I can't remember the translation of off the top. It's like God is one, his matter one, his permutations one, or something like that. But there could be lots of ways to affirm the unity, but I don't know this one, so that's cool.
Yeah, this one is kind of fun because it's referred to as, like, if you were to when you read this Surah Ikhlas, it's like it's basically like as if it's equivalent to reading a third of the Quran. I feel like that's kind of a cute way of denouncing the Trinity because it's like 1/3 of the Quran.
Oh, I see.
And it's the assertion of the unity, basically saying God does not beget and God is not begotten.
Right,
it's really denouncing hard on the Trinity. So, which the Trinity, incidentally, is like really hard for non-Catholics and Christians to wrap their head around, how you can claim to be a monotheistic religion and still believe in 3 gods. So that's, it's interesting to get different points of view on that, because Christians don't have a problem with it. You look at like Muslims, they just, it doesn't make any sense to them, how you can have that mentality about it. Actually, this is kind of interesting, the last few paragraphs, because we had the sort of breakdown of he's received this map of the Aethers on the Tree of Life. We have the explanation of the proper way to invoke the Aethers. And then we have this description of, yea, thou tremblest, but from within, because of the Holy Spirit that is descended into thy heart, and shaketh thee as an aspen in the wind. They also tremble that are without, and they are shaken from without by the earthquakes of his judgment. They have set their affections upon the earth, and they have stamped with their feet upon the earth, and cried, It moveth not. Therefore hath the earth opened with strong motion, like the sea, and swallowed them. Yea, she hath opened her womb to them that lusted after her, and she hath closed herself upon them. There lie they in torment until by her quaking the earth is shattered like brittle glass, and dissolved like salt in the waters of his mercy, so that they are cast upon the air to be blown about therein, like seeds that shall take root in the earth. Yet turn their affections upward to the sun.
So there's two ways, right? Like Crowley has done this thing where he's deliberately crossed the abyss by an act of will, and now he's shaking from within because the Holy Spirit has descended into his heart. Whereas everyone else is walking upon the earth absorbed by their sense impressions, and they stomp upon the earth and they see that it doesn't move, so they're like, oh, I guess this must be real. They participate in their sense impressions. And what this is saying is that the engagement with the sensory material becomes so profound that eventually it causes an earthquake. Like you keep knocking up against this material of the sense impressions and it begins to crumble. And so they are shaken just like Crowley is shaken. Crowley by the internal reception of the Holy Spirit, by the perception of that which is beyond, them by their confrontation with that which appears to be real. And the princess, this golden woman, with light in her hair and stuff, she receives their love of her sense impressions and ends up sucking them up, and then the whole world, the earthquake shakes them so much that it collapses under their feet. They end up floating in the wind, and they eventually refine themselves to the place where they can do what Crowley did and also cross the abyss. So it's kind of inevitable whether you choose to do the aspiration now and reach up, or whether you're immersed in the things of your senses. Eventually there comes a time when you have to reckon with this false understanding, and so it's almost the doctrine of the wheel of samsara, right? Like it could take lifetimes upon lifetimes, but eventually this realization is sort of inevitable.
I'm very fond of this imagery as well, because it's like this idea of like taking something for solidity, something, that you can stamp your feet on and say, this is not moving, but then it ends up gradually falling away and breaking apart and dissolving. And you are cast about, and instead of just being an unmovable, inert thing, you discover that, you become a seed and you're directing your focus upward to the sun, so that it's like the earth becomes this churning, life-breeding thing instead of just inert matter.
There's two more things I want to say about this before we move on to the fourth Aethyr. Jim Eshelman has it listed as paragraph 8. I guess it's probably paragraph 10. This is she that hath bedecked her hair with the 7 stars and the 7 breaths of God that move and thrill its existence. And she hath tied her hair with the 7 combs, whereupon are written the 7 secret names of God that are not known, even of angels, or of archangels, or of the leader of armies, or of the Lord. Holy, holy, holy art thou, blessed thy name forever, unto whom the aeons are but the pulsings of blood. I am blind and deaf, and my sight and hearing is exhausted. I know the sense of touch is trembling within me. The idea of her hair being filled with stars reminds me of the woman clothed in the sun of Revelation. And I sort of struggled along trying to identify who the woman clothed with the sun is supposed to be. It's likely Mary, because she comes from heaven and then gives birth to pseudo-Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, and is chased around by the dragon and stuff. But here, if this daughter, who is the palace, who is the world, if she has the stars in her hair, and it doesn't say, but hopefully the moon under her feet and everything else, then that makes the woman clothed with the sun. That reinterprets that as maybe Pistis Sophia.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's like her hair is the light of God.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that. I think it's in what is paragraph 3/5 here?
And the hair of her head that flows down to her feet is the very light of God himself.
So the hair of her head that flows down to her feet, it says she's naked, it says she's covered in these fine golden hairs, but then the hair of her head flows all the way down to her feet, and that's the light of God himself. So she's clothed with the sun.
Yeah,
right?
pretty much, yeah.
Also, the thing that first distracts Sophia from performing her mystery appropriately is looking up towards this light. She gets a glimpse of the light of God, and that is what causes the whole problem. So if the light of God is coming down from above and bathing her in this way, if the light of, let's call him Abraxas for now, the light of Abraxas is what causes the calamity in the first place. The idea that she would be bathed in it, and like the euphemism of like being a kind of hair that drapes her down, is sort of a mirror reflection, an analog of that imagery as well.
Yeah, another way to think of it, I guess, is like we could think of the hair being, there's, because of my hair, the trees of eternity from the Book of the Law, but it's also like we could think of this as the light of God coming from, if it's God's light himself, it's sort of like coming from the distant sphere of the stars. If we think of the Sephiroth kind of like coming inwards, like the Chaldean order of the planets, we have the sphere of the stars and the zodiac, and the light. Traditionally, that's the light of God coming through the star holes in the sky. And it says, "She hath tired her hair with 7 combs." And you could take the 7 combs as being the 7 planets. So you could read an astrological kind of like, the lights being refined by the planets on its way in towards the Earth.
All through this and all through that description of her, I should say, and the description of the and of many things in the Revelation to John the Divine, there are 7s, which are probably analogs of the 7 unfixed
the
stars,
wanderers.
7 wandering stars. So things up to this point have been pretty nice. Crowley has crossed the abyss and gotten out of the horrible world of the shells, and has now had a perfectly lovely vision of the palace of the princess, which is also the princess. And so the first thing you're confronted with on the other side is it seems like it's all resolved, right? Like we've resolved the complex into the simple, and now we have this beatific vision, but then going through the rest of the Aethyrs up to the realm of the Most High, we realize how even at this more refined level, the picture can be more complicated. So going into this, we have a couple of different interpretive lenses, which I think are harmonious. I've already started talking about the sort of how Gnostic this feels and its relationship to the mythology around Sophia and Yaldabaoth and Abrasax, and I'm going to continue doing that. But you were talking about Crowley's system of knight, queen, son, daughter, or something like that, and specifically this idea of setting the daughter upon the throne of the mother. This is talked about a lot in the Book of Thoth, Crowley's tarot manual, and it's talked about in relationship to like mythology, like the princess and the pea, where the knights have to compete for the princess's hand or something.
Golden showers are involved somehow.
Whatever. No, the princess and the pea is not a good example of this, because that's the princess has to prove that she's a princess. But the knights compete for the hand of the princess, and then if they win, they get to marry her, and then like they become king, but the power is given by virtue of the female inheriting the kingdom of the father. And so in his woman called the Scarlet Woman is all power given. And I kind of I hope that I haven't eaten your lunch, because I was going to prompt you to say something about that before we move into this, because my understanding is this tarot card, like as an interpretive tool for understanding the court cards of the tarot, like, oh, if you draw a princess or if you draw a knight, think about these fairy tales, and that helps you understand what it means in the spread. But as far as Kabbalistic and esoteric I don't think I'm the right person to articulate that. So maybe you
I don't know. I feel like the thing is, it's like I still feel like I'm learning to engage with this myself and gain better understanding of it and that sort of thing. But a very important thing at the outset here of this Aether is that we have this idea of the line is, "Behold the brilliance of the Lord, whose feet are set upon him that pardoneth transgression." And it seems to anticipate, I think when we originally wanted to do Aethers 4 and 3, I had already read through 3, and there's the god of vengeance coming into play, and the idea of stamping down the idea of mercy and this sort of thing. So it seems to anticipate that. But it's also giving this, because it also refers to the idea of the white king and his black slave, which sounds obviously pretty gross when we think of it like with our first reaction, political reactionaryism. But it's like what seems to be alluded to there is the lover's card, where we have the marriage going on between the interchanged colored characters. So there seems to be an interesting sort of thing going on here, and we have the brilliance of the Lord, whose feet are set upon him that pardoneth transgression.
So somebody's standing on Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. And presumably the god of vengeance is as being sort of in opposition to the he who pardoneth transgression.
I want to bring up briefly this the punishment of one of the punishments of Genesis, where the serpent wounds the woman on the heel and the woman wounds the serpent on the head. So it seems to be this fighting between heads and heels. And Gnostically, modern people like to identify the serpent with Satan, but one possible Gnostic interpretation is that the serpent is Jesus, trying to encourage the false god to breathe the breath of life into Adam. So there's that little bit of there's that little bit of soul in the sense object, so that eventually we have the chance of redemption. And so what's about to come when we have the god entangled with the woman, who is all of creation? It's I know it says he that standeth upon the, but maybe it's the woman who is everything standing upon.
And there seems to be an interchange of active and passive ideas here too. Just like with the woman and the serpent, it seems like you have traditionally a passive association of the woman with what you might conceive as the active element of the serpent, kind of an interchange positions. And similarly here, we have immediately after that, upon him who pardoneth transgression, we have, behold the sixfold star that flameth in the vault, the seal of the marriage of the great white king and this black slave. And that sixfold star, of course, is the hexagram, which is the interlacing of the triangle of fire and of water, which are the active and passive elements. So it's the union of those two things. And we have a lot of these ideas of union of opposites, union of active and passive, in a very forceful, fiery, violent kind of way coming up in this Aether.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think that probably comes into play with that formula of tetragrammaton as well.
Yeah, there is a violence to it, and it is explicitly a sexual union, right? The triangle of water rising up and the triangle of fire coming down and intermingling, being a sort of creation of the universe in sort of sexual union. And that sexual union is sort of seems to be missing from the Gnostic fable. Like, it seems to be strictly about violence. But you do get this language of hollowing each other out, which is, if you start thinking of it erotically, is a little bit on the nose and maybe a little bit gross.
It's not just a visit at Taco Bell. Or
yeah, no. Which I don't know. I have no way to go up from there. I am not yes-anding Taco Bell. You win the joke.
Well, I apologize. That means that I've ruined your...
But yeah, the introduction of the sexual imagery that's going to come here is not contrary to what we saw in the Pistis Sophia around some of the same thing.
It's more explicit, I suppose. But
Yeah. As Crowley is wont to be.
Yeah. And so we have he does say, like his note says, in reference to the White King and his black slave, it says, this is a common alchemical symbolism. It occurs also in Tibetan mythology. And throughout the tarot trumps, there's a lot of alchemical symbolism of that sort, which also involves like the art card. There's an interchanging of colors and admixture and these kinds of ideas. So, and I suppose in the Hierophant card too, I suppose you could make analogies to that. And the reason I bring those two cards up is because, again, the ninth Aether has Leo on either side of the Sagittarius, which is attributed to the art card, admixture, alchemical admixture. And then this Aether, the fourth Aether, has Taurus, which is attributed to the Hierophant card.
We have here another host of angels, blue and gold. In the throng they cry, holy, holy, holy art thou that art not shaken in the earthquakes and in the thunders. Remember the earthquakes, the banging up against sense perceptions. We've overcome that now, so we're not shaken by the earthquakes. And the end of things is to come upon. The day of be with us is at hand, for he hath created the universe and overthrown it, that he might take his pleasure thereupon.
That seems important.
So we have this God we're about to meet is the God that created the universe, is the God that overthrew it, and the God that did all this with the idea of taking his pleasure thereupon. Also, it is the story of the great white king and his black slave. Now we meet God, 100 arms, in each hand's a weapon of terrible power, a crown of all terrible things, and an upright towel on his forehead with blasphemies on either side. He's sexually entangled with the woman from the ninth Aether, the golden virgin.
Princess,
the golden princess. And it says, her purity hath tinged his black with blue. So the God is explicitly black. So the union of the white king and the black slave, the God we meet here, who created the whole universe, is the black slave, not the white king. And the woman he's entangled with is not either black or white. She's golden. She's covered in these golden hairs, rosy. But now she's rosy with the. So she's gone from golden to rosy, both colors of Tefereth, and she's tinging his black with blue. So the colors of her are golden, rosy, and maybe blue. Certainly not white, right? So we're going to meet somebody fairly shortly who might be the white king, but the God of creation, who is the responsible for the world that we're in, is going to be this black slave, and he's creating the world which is the golden princess. Remember, she's evacuating all these shells of the dead, which are the earth. Evacuating is a terrible word for that. Perfect. I love the idea that Taco Bell is the shells of the dead. Every time, it's perfectly healthy food. Like, as fast food goes, it's not a bad option. You got, but all the clients seem to be dead. Every time I go in there, it's shells of the dead.
You can get soft shells of the dead if you want.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's very good. Yeah. Or you can get a
quesadilla of the dead.
Holy shit.
A fries supreme. A fries supreme. Just a little Coltrane for you there.
So there's the image of the God of creation as this vicious warlord ravaging the golden princess that is creation, and her fighting back quite hard. It's brutal, but also there's a sense in which it becomes ecstatic. So it's not really a rape in the traditional sense. It's like a fist fight gone wrong or something, in which they both are experiencing pleasure in the combat. Like people who do combat sports, they like beating the shit out of each other, right? It's fun until it's not. So there's some of that energy there of like
it's rough sex is basically and it's an interesting play on like a conceptualization of the universe as well, because the universe is an exceedingly violent place, and there's lots of good stuff in the universe and there's lots of violent stuff in the universe, and the way you read anything as good or violent or negative or positive or anything like that, it depends on context. But in this case, it's saying their joint cry is an intolerable anguish, yet it is the cry of their rapture, so that every pain, every curse, and every bereavement, and every death of everything in the whole universe is but one little gust of wind in that tempest scream of ecstasy.
And he says, the voice thereof is not articulate, it is vain to seek comparison, it is absolutely continuous without breaks or beats. There seem to be vibration therein, it is because of the imperfection of the seer. And think about the sound of Om, or anytime you've heard like a dissonant yoga class all chanting Om together, and how even though everyone's only singing one note, because the notes don't harmonize perfectly, the waves of sound pressure level hit your ear in an angular way. And so what you hear sounds like, even though the pitch is not changing, you're getting different, the peak of the wave is at a different level in a different frequency. So you're hearing alternating pitches because one is more dominant at one moment of the wave and another is more dominant at another moment of the wave. Singing bowls sometimes sound like this too, even though they make consistent pitches. Sometimes the overtones are wrong so that they whoop, and so the sound, the fundamental sound of the universe is the ecstatic cry of the orgasm of these two people who genuinely hate each other performing an act of love together. I want to say something about the way the self-willed is described in the Pistis Sophia, how he emanates from himself this lion-faced power. Here it talks about how terrible the face is, gaping blood and stuff like that. But also he then sends out hundreds of agents into the aeons below. So Sophia's in the 13th aeon, and there's a number of aeons below. He sends out all these agents into the aeons below to wait for her, to guard the aeons in case she tries to leave her place and go down. There's 100 or so agents waiting to savage her on the way down. And here it says he hath 1,000 arms, and in each arm is a terrible weapon. So there's this analog to these parts of himself that are out in other places having terrible weapons ready also to savage her with those. And he hates her in the Pistis Sophia. The lion-faced power hates Sophia, and then all the other guardians of the subsequent aeons also hate Sophia because she's stopped performing her mystery. She's not doing her job, so all her employees are mad. And so there's this hollowing out of her because of, it's emphasized again and again, because of this hate. And so in the Pistis Sophia, it's quite pathetic. Like, she feels really beat up upon and really abused. But here in this text, she gets to fight back and hate back.
Well, the thing is, there's no... correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no actual usage of the term hate.
It isn't the
so
word.
That's an inference.
It isn't the word hate.
Sense.
They're clasped in a furious, angry, clasped in a furious embrace.
So that's an inference of hate. So that I just want to point that out because it's kind of like you can read it as hate, but at the same time, you can also read it as, well, it's not introducing it as hate. It's just like if you catch, if you catch a couple in the middle of like. Angry, violent, rough sex, you might misinterpret it.
That's true. Yet she tightly clingeth about him so that he is strangled. She has forced back his head, and his throat is livid with the pressure of her fingers. Their joint cry is that intolerable anguish. Again, I think the throat is important. A number of different schemes I've seen for doing like middle pillar exercises will attribute the throat either to Dath or to Bina. Mm-hmm. So we're in this place of the creation of the universe on the Tree of Life too, right? With all these, again, with all the things of existence being emanated out. And the throat is important for speech making. Importantly, God speaks the world into existence, and Jesus is sometimes called the Word. And again, this idea of the sound of Om being the fundamental vibration of the universe.
Incidentally, on that, what you were saying about Om as well, it's kind of pertinent here as well, I think, because the way in which that this formula of Tetragrammaton is described implies something similar to the way that Crowley talks about his sort of adjustment to the word Om, which is instead of AUM, he adds the gamma and nu at the end of it. So you end up with a sort of like nasal kind of quality where it's retracting back in at the end. So we have so it's kind of coming out and then retracting back in again. And that's sort of something that maybe we can think of in the back of our heads with this idea of Tetragrammaton as well. It's like Yod-He Vav-He is unfolding from the All-Father into the creation of the world and then retracting back in by placing the daughter onto the throne of the mother to awaken the eld of the All-Father. So we have this oscillation back and forth as well.
Yeah, very good. And here's the section you were looking for before, where it talks about the weakness of Crowley's astral senses. And he's saying that the imperfection of the ears of the seer is what's causing the vibration in the indifferentiated sound. That feeling, here we are, like maybe the way you're saying with the addition of the NG kind of nasal at the end of the Om. But he's actually told it's not bad. He said he's trained his eyes well so he can see much, and has trained his ears a little so he can hear a little. He's not being chastised for his understanding of the sound. It's his other senses, which he has trained scarcely at all, and so he can't taste or smell or touch anything.
But there's also sort of emphasizing the fact that by the other senses is meant not the physical senses, but the spiritual correlations of the senses.
Yeah, so like the same way the ability to imagine those feelings.
Yeah, the different sensitivities from within.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because, I mean, obviously our refined senses are the ones that we use for survival in the material world. So these inner senses take extra care in the process of refinement. Yeah, so he's being slightly softly chastised on that front.
But it doesn't matter because he's the seer, the representative of humanity, and his senses are those senses which humanity possesses. So even if he could feel these other things, even if he could smell the aether, there would be no way for him to communicate the smell of the aether.
Yeah.
Which might seem weird. Like, if it smells like raspberries, you can just say that. I mean, you're communicating a smell by text, by an auditory, you're communicating a smell with a word, so that's indirect. But it says his eyes see very well, and he's communicating all the images with words too. So why is the auditory thing why is the other sensory perceptions a problem and not seeing a problem? So
well, looking back at the previous Aether, what was being said about the daughter and the fact that you can't really, like, everything turns the mind, all the faculties of the mind and all these the imagination and all these things turn back from grasping her. So it seems similar to that, where it's the things that are trans-rational, things that are beyond the standard sort of workings of the mind, so that in order to pierce into those things, special, subtle senses need to be developed.
There was something important that happened when we were talking about the Pistis Sophia, where I was trying to understand, or maybe not the Pistis Sophia, but something since then, where I was trying to understand how Thelema was Gnostic, and saying things like how, in the Gnostic Mass, the O lion and serpent that destroy the destroyer be mighty among us, O lion and O serpent that destroy the destroyer be mighty among us, or venerating certain serpents, like using the sign of Apophis and Typhon at key moments, such as in the supreme ritual to celebrate the new year or something. It's like these things that are devils in other traditions are seen as Christ figures by Crowley, as kind of redeemers, maybe because the devils are against the world, and if the world is created by an evil god. But the lion serpent is specifically Yaldabaoth. The lion serpent is not just a devil against God, it's specifically the evil god, and that's the O lion and O serpent that destroyed the destroyer be mighty among us.
That makes me think of something we missed from the song in the previous Aether.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, just briefly. Actually, it was the refrain, and I guess we never did double back to that. But it says, "Glory unto him that is concealed, and glory unto her that beareth the cup." And of course, him that is concealed makes you think of Hadit, and her that beareth the cup could be, the cup is always representative of kind of like the womb, and you could see that as Nuit. And glory unto the one that is the child and the father of their love. The child and the father of their love. We usually think of Ra Hoor-Queet as being the child, but also the father. I have this continuously developing conception of what the demiurge actually is, and I kind of think that the demiurge is us, each of us. It's like, and that's why the demiurge doesn't realize that it's not really God. Our relationship with God is actually a creator in itself. That, so we're actually part of that process. The way that we bridge to the divine is the demiurge, and we're completely unaware of that fact. So we end up feeding into the idea that this is actually God that we're dealing with,
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. I'm so glad you said that, because I don't think I was going to get there. But this idea of the world being mediated by our sense impressions, like maybe God is the things in themselves and we are us, but the demiurge that creates the universe we reside in is the mediator, is those sense impressions and those perceptions and those hopes and aspirations and fears that cause us to create the world that we navigate. So there is a psychological demiurge as well, right? And maybe that's literally what it is, in the way epistemology becomes metaphysics sometimes, right?
Yeah, and the way that the gods function in general and whatnot. But yeah, this idea of like, okay, we have Hadit. If it is Hadit Nuit being referred to, glory unto him that is concealed, and glory unto her that beareth the cup, and glory unto the one that is the child and the father of their love. So basically facilitating in a sense, and so we have this instead of one creator, we have a triad of creators, or an interplay of creation and that sort of thing. So and then glory unto the star, and glory unto the snake, and glory unto the swordsman of the sun, and worship and blessing throughout the aeon unto the name of the beast, foursquare, mystic, wonderful. So that was that refrain that we had skipped there.
Yeah, very good. Very, very good. So I was sort of thinking about Crowley's relationship to this demiurge, right? And Crowley's involvement in the Gnostic cult, which he didn't found, but which he enthusiastically, promoted, the Ecclesiastica Gnostica Catholica, where we have this Gnostic Mass venerating the lion and the serpent that destroys the destroyer. So Crowley finds this Gnostic doctrine about how God is evil, and then extrapolates from that the idea, well, if God is evil, then the devil must be good or something, and ends up uniting with devils and angels equally, but also having this idea of the evil God as, at least in the Gnostic Mass, as being partly God as well. And so here we have in what Jim S. Jesselman calls paragraph 7 of this, and the angel speaks, "Behold, the vision is utterly beyond thine understanding." So if this is the demiurge, if this is Yaldabaoth and Pistis Sophia creating the world through violence, and like the god who created the world and destroyed the world all for the satisfaction, so that he could take his pleasure thereupon, like Crowley's failure to understand that this is in fact the bad guy. It's not more complicated than that. The universe is evil could be what the angel means, Crowley is trying to develop a complicated picture of this relationship to good and evil and everything in its right place and what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. And maybe that's correct, but at least in the context of this Aether, in the context of this vision, it's like, no, this is the bad guy. How are you not seeing that?
Well, there is another way you can read that as well, because it says this vision is utterly beyond thine understanding, yet shall thou endeavor to unite thyself with the dreadful marriage bed. Utterly beyond thy understanding. Understanding is Bina. He's just initiated to Bina. We could say that Bina is, of course, the stand-in for where the princess is, being on the throne of the mother, and this god with the 1,000 arms and everything like that could be chaos in Chokmah, and so therefore beyond understanding in Chokmah, wisdom. So there's like a certain level of like, in order to completely understand it, to completely grasp it, he needs to move on to the next grade. But all the same, he's going to try his best to unite himself with this dreadful marriage bed.
I think chaos is going to be the White King, but maybe if the 1,000-armed god is the Black Slave, I think chaos is going to be the White King. But other than that, I agree with you. Like, there's more than one thing that it could mean that it's beyond understanding, and thinking of it as being like a technical word, like a Kabbalah word. That's really important. So,
same thing with the White King and the Black Slave, because another way to think of that is, the White King could very easily be Kether, and then the Black Slave would be Malkuth, because black is the color of earth,
right?
Kabbalistically speaking, and that sort of thing. So basically, it's as much to say that there's a few different ways that you can read any of these.
Well, I think they're all harmonious. They're all harmonious. Like, there are a few wrong things that could be said. Like, it's possible to have a wrong interpretation.
Oh, for sure.
But but the correct,
like, for instance, your interpretation is wrong.
Correct.
Mine is. I'm kidding.
But the many and various correct interpretations are all equally correct and need to be and harmonious.
Yeah, harmonious is a really good word for that, because they harmonize with one another.
And so the next thing that happens when he endeavors to unite himself with the dreadful marriage bed is that he is torn asunder, nerve from nerve, vein from vein, and even more intimately, cell from cell, molecule from molecule, atom to atom, and at the same time all is crushed together. Tearing apart is crushing together. And now we have the first introduction of this name, chaos. Chaos is peace. Cosmos is the war of the rose and the cross. It was a half-framed face that I said, all images are useless. And then pretty soon we're going to have, it's a couple of paragraphs down, but we're going to have the man torn asunder by the claws of the eagle, and the lion gored by the horn of the bull. It says, and the moan torn of the... Anyway, it's expressed a little strangely. But so, not only is Crowley torn apart and crushed together, but the cherubs that guard the gates of the universe, the whole world is collapsing into itself here now, too. So remember, earlier I said, keep note of this idea of the day of be with us, because now we have the return of some of this apocalyptic imagery with in uniting with the marriage bed that creates the universe. Crowley had by trying to unite himself with this moment of creation, Crowley has destroyed the universe. He's ripped himself apart, nerve from nerve and vein from vein, molecule from molecule, and also torn the heavens apart with the cherub, destroying itself incestuously.
But it seems like everything's on that, because it also references the idea of like the tearing apart is a crushing together, and it's with the emphasis on the fact that this is supernal logic. It's up in the supernals where things are only true by virtue of containing their opposites. So it's like these things are true at once, and it's something you can't rationalize because it's transrational.
Yeah, and I think it's important to think of this process as being an ongoing, constant process.
That's what I was about to say, is that one of the ways to conceptualize this, because what comes to my mind, for instance, as an analog in the world around us, is if you look at galaxies and stars and whatnot in the systems that they are in, the ways in which like galaxies, ram through each other and tear each other apart and then crush each other together. We have the forces of gravity and like repulsion of different forces, the chaos that it seems to be that creates order within it as well. So we have this balance that's sort of created out of that by virtue of which we are able to have what we could think of as peace, the balance of the universe, which is always in a state of chaos. So it's like basically looking at it from that point of view. It's what comes to mind with this idea of like the four elements represented by the powers of the Sphinx, for instance. You could picture the truncated pyramids in the watchtowers of the universe in the Golden Dawn setup. Each of them has like the four elements, and they're sort of held at bay so that you have it's almost like you have the forces repelling atoms, the elements of atoms or atoms themselves from one another at the same time as you have them being pulled together and that sort of thing. So
I think it's when we say like, oh, the destruction and creation of the universe is like an ongoing process that just keeps happening, or the revelation, like apocalypses are individual, like an initiate goes to a certain stage in their invocation work and has like an individual, like the idea of the apocalypse being like an individual thing rather than the end of the world. I think I wonder if that gives people the impression that it's not significant, that they don't have to worry about it, just because the world came to an end. It's just for that one person, so we don't have to think about it. So
it's a somewhat dismissive sort of...
like for Crowley, the destruction of the world by fire took place in 1904. But that was just for Crowley. Like, people don't have to worry about that. But when you think about how the whole 20th century played out from then till now, it really does seem like we're living in a different universe than we were, 1920 is way different than 1900. Like, the destruction of the world by fire was something significant. Or like Jim Jones's White Knight, when all those people killed themselves, because they thought the world was coming to an end or something. The world really did come to an end. Like, it's not just like, oh, this thing happened that we don't have to worry about because we're in this other world, and that was just like a psychological thing that happened to them. I think we have to think of like the apocalypse as being an apocalypse, but also being something personal, is that totally obscure?
No, I'm just trying to tie it to what I was just saying, because I don't follow how you got there. Like, it seemed non sequitur to me, so that's why I'm kind of like trying to tie together where...
I might have been going back a couple of paragraphs. Okay. So we started talking about how by trying to unite with the marriage bed, Crowley destroys the world, right? He destroys himself, and he destroys, and then the cherubs collapse in on each other. Like, there's a cataclysm here happening, and you were sort of saying like, no, that happens. That this is like a
no, okay, I see.
This is like a supernal logic.
Maybe we were talking about two different things in that case, because I guess like I didn't read it as he was destroyed by it. It seems like this is a state of constant pulling apart and crushing together, so that it's this, just like in the sense of the universe, is like this constant state of this chaos that creates an order and that sort of thing. So it seems like it's continuous, just like their love-making / violence is a continuous thing. It's that's the impression that I had from this, and I guess I just didn't read it as this is an end point. Whereas you're reading it as he's being destroyed by this.
Well, it's continuous, but it's continuous, and it happens for initiates at different places, and it happens for different people at different times. But it's also a moment, And so,
Let me use this analogy.
This is we're specifically taught. I think we've noticed the day of be with us, and the black god who has created the world and destroyed the world for his own satisfaction, right? To take his pleasure thereupon.
Yeah.
And so now we were introduced to created the world, destroyed the world to take his pleasure thereupon, and so now we have the play about how that happens.
Okay.
So we see the creation of the world with Yaldabaoth and Pistis making love and hollowing each other out, and then Crowley trying to unite himself with that marriage bed and tearing apart himself and crushing himself together, like being discombobulated by that, and then the cherubs collapsing in on each other, the four corners of the universe, like in violence, ripping each other apart. So it's like, so now there's the story of so this is the day of be with us. This is the destruction, we're seeing the creation of the world and the destruction of the world happening as a continuum, but my point is that it's also a moment. Like, it's also a specific thing that's happening at a specific time that will have consequences. It's both a continuum and also like a cataclysm that's important.
Yeah, okay. No, that's the thing. I didn't register that because I wasn't thinking of it as a point, sort of like the way that people think of it as the end of the world will happen on such and such a date kind of thing. I was thinking of it more like the sun is a constant explosion or series of explosions. That's actually a fact, and it's crushed in by its own gravity. That's what keeps it from, it can't pass a certain bound because of its gravity and that sort of thing. So that's like the way in which I was figuring this in my mind.
Yeah. So so I think I did understand what you were saying about it being.
I didn't understand what you were like.
About there being a continuity,
Yeah.
but each of those moments is also important.
Gotcha.
Every time the world ends for an initiate, it's not just he has a psychological experience. The world really does come to an end.
Yeah.
And then we live in a different world.
Exactly. It's like a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, and then right after that we have. Actually, with regard to the Sphinx, it also has reference to Oedipus, Tiresias, and Irenaeus, which are, well, Oedipus and Tiresias are both sort of related to Sphinx mythology in one way or another, and to each other. The Irenaeus are like some kind of gods or something like that. I think the Furies.
So at the beginning of Oedipus Rex, there's a character named Tyrrhenius who's a blind seer who tells Oedipus not to solve the mystery. So like everyone is sick and dying, and Oedipus, as the king, needs to solve the mystery. And the part of the curse, when you're blind, you can see the future, but part of the curse of blindness is that nobody believes you. So Oedipus solves the mystery anyway, and the plague is because he's married his mom. And so in order to cure his people, he needs to resolve the horror of incest. And so the cure is he rips out his own eyes and sends himself into exile. And so by the time of the Oedipus at Colonus, Oedipus is now a blind seer who is being ignored. And then the Aeneas or the Orestai are the kindly ones who specifically their job is to punish patricide. So if you kill your parent, then the Orestai take revenge. And they're their main characters in plays by Sophocles, the Orestai trilogy. And so there's a little bit of a mistake happening here. They're not really characters in the Oedipus story, but because it begins with incest, because it begins with mother sex, maybe
That's what it's
maybe the angels are imagining that they're also part of this story because they're supposed to punish patricide, but maybe because Oedipus is fucking his mom and they both are brought asunder by this revelation, maybe the idea is that the Orostai are involved somehow.
Yeah, because again, we have this tetragrammaton thing is like a very incestuous process that's at play.
So the question is like, who is Crowley? Who is this? Oedipus, Tannis, or the Orostai? Who is that blind seer, the fool above wisdom? They're asking like, which one are you? You know,
Actually,
like, what's your part in this drama?
Crowley introduces this as he in the notes says this is actually well, I mean, maybe he's not saying that. I was going to say like because then he's finishing that with whom do the hounds of heaven follow and the crocodiles of hell await? And then it gives Aleph, Thou, Yod, Ayin, Resh, Tau is his name. And then Crowley says that enumerates to 687, and that's 3 times 229, and 229 is a possible spelling of Iwaz in Hebrew in full. And so I made the inference there that this person is actually the introduction of Iwaz coming down, but that is an inference on my part.
Well, that's not bad either, because like if the question is who is the blind seer that is going to be ignored for the rest of their lives, you know, the way in which
I was,
and he's been told that the vision is beyond his understanding. So like if his HGA is trying to get him to do one thing, and he's like not understanding the advice, then that puts the angel in the role of the blind seer. So I don't hate that. Yeah,
but that's also going back to the Oedipus, Tiresias, and Irenaeus. It feels like there's something to tease out of that as well, because it's doing that in allusion to the powers of the Sphinx. But the powers of the Sphinx also are appropriate to the letters of Tetragrammaton, because each of the letters of Tetragrammaton is associated with one of the 4 elements. So, and again, like I say, we have this incestuous formula where the son places the daughter on the throne of the mother to awaken the eld of the All-Father. So it seems like there's more to delve into there.
Pretty soon there's going to be the terrible and wonderful is the mystery thereof, O thou Titan that hast climbed into the bed of Juno. I had to do some looking up because I didn't know. Greek gods are so incestuous, you know, I wasn't sure who had climbed into the bed of Juno, but the answer is almost nobody. Juno is bizarrely faithful to Jupiter, despite how promiscuous Jupiter is. And there's a hero named Exonion or something like that, which just means mighty hero, who gets the closest, climbs into Juno's bed, but then makes love with a cloud instead of with the goddess. And I can't remember what his punishment is, but it's severe. And then that's where all the centaurs come from. Is the union of Zonion with this cloud. And so the idea of Crowley climbing into the marriage bed to try to unite with the golden princess, but being told he won't understand the vision, but he'll go anyway. And now this idea of a Titan trying to sleep with Juno, but no one's ever slept with Juno. It's like a false cloud thing. Anyway, there's some weirdness there too, and this question of the identity of Crowley. I thought there was some continuity there, so that's why I jumped
and
ahead.
it follows that with yet hast thou uncovered the nakedness of the Holy One, and the Queen of Heaven is in travail of child, and his name shall be called, so on, so on, so on. But basically that seems to be alluding back to what we saw with the Aether 9, where he's entering the palace of the princess, which is actually the princess, and we have this idea of begetting a child upon the Queen of Heaven, and the nakedness of the Holy One. That's like the nakedness of my father kind of energy from that as well. But it's like the idea of begetting a child, and then that child ends up being called Vir, Vis, or Vir, Vis, Virus, and Virtus, and Viridis, which is like 5 V's, of course, alluding to VVVVV.
Yeah, it's Viverum. It could be Viverum Versum Vivis Victi, but it's also a list of classical Roman virtues. It's like strength, poisonousness, anyway, there's a so
well, vir means man. Actually, I have them all right here as well as the ability to read Latin. But
cool.
But vis is power or force. Virus is poison, as you say, and then virtus is manliness, virtue. That's where the term virtue originally comes from, and then sort of took on other connotations with Christianity and whatnot. Viridis is green. And I guess now we think of green as being inept with something or new to something, but it's like I guess you could sort of maybe postulate that's green as in sort of like virile.
Yeah, I think both poisonous and green mean
potent,
because I think poisonous means like ejaculates a lot, like the way a snake has venom, and then green means
like
produces many
life.
children. Yeah.
So
and so these are like at least according to Wikipedia, these are like classic Roman virtues, and so it might even be the same thing as the Greek name whatever that.
I got Ixion here.
Ixion. So which just means strong man, and so these are the characteristics of a Roman strong man.
Yeah, nice. Because the note that I have regarding Ixion says refers to Ixion who embraced Juno in the form of a cloud, which is slightly different from the way you were describing it, but I'm not familiar with it outside of exactly what you've said and what says here.
I'm happy with what you've written.
Okay. Well, I didn't write anything, but thank you for attributing. I sometimes think of myself as a reincarnation of Aleister Crowley. I think I'm the only one to do that.
No, you're
I should
totally
get on
unique
Reddit.
in that. Yeah.
I should jump on Reddit and start making posts.
You probably should claim the OTO.
Yeah, and explain how that verse 76 from chapter 2 of the Book of the Law, what that means. I'll explain that to people. I see a lot of those posts on Reddit. And of course Crowley does actually have a note here basically explaining that that's what it's referring to as VVVVV, the motto of the seer himself, Crowley, as Magister Templi. And also apparently each of these levels again of of Crowley, for instance, are different levels. They can be said to be just Crowley himself, but at the same time, they also function as discrete individuals, so to speak. So we have like the adept self, for instance. And in fact, when we had that bit where he was saying the seer, so far as he is a seer, is the expression of the spirit of humanity, when we had that note, there was a note to that said, he is 666, Crowley, the angel of Tifereth, the middle kingdom of the Sephiroth, mankind. So that would be like the adept self of Crowley, as opposed to the scribe who's taking things down when he's receiving things and stuff like that. Versus VVVVV, which is the master of temple level, and can also be seen as its own individual self that works through Crowley, not just Crowley himself.
Yeah, very good. I'm just trying to read ahead here to see if there's anything we need to say about the last two paragraphs of this.
So basically go back to the desert where all kinds of horrible things live.
Yeah. The owl and the bat unto the scorpions of the sand. I'm trying to decide if that's a reference to the only occurrence of the name of Lilith in the Old Testament. There's something about there's some place in the Old Testament where there's like a list of horrible things, and one of them is Lilot, and I wonder if the owl and the bat and the scorpion have enough harmony with this one little verse that it's enough to point back at this verse that mentions Lilot.
They are capitalized, owl, bat, and scorpions. Yeah. And also one of the most famous reliefs of Lilith is of her holding these two circle and bar sort of things, but at her feet are owls. So owls are sort of associated with her. Yeah, the passage itself, while you're looking that up, desolate is the Aether, for thou must return unto the habitations of the owl and the bat, unto the scorpions of the sand, and the blanched eyeless beetles that have neither wing nor horn.
Oh, cool.
Return, blot out the vision, wipe from thy mind the memory thereof. Stifle the fire with green wood, consume the sacrament, cover the altar, veil the shrine, shut up the temple, and spread booths in the marketplace, until the appointed time come when the Holy One shall declare unto thee the mystery of the third Aether. For the great angel Hu is about thee. And that's Hua, or Hu. It's pronounced Hu in Hebrew, but in Arabic, the same word exists and means the same thing. It means he. And it would be pronounced Hua.
Yeah, I think this is a dead end. Night and day shall not be quenched, its smoke shall go up forever. From generation unto generation it shall lie in waste, and no one shall pass through it forever and ever. But the hawk and the hedgehog shall possess it, the owl and the raven shall live in it. He shall stretch the line of confusion over it, and plummet into chaos of its nobles. And they shall name it no kingdom there, and the princes shall be nothing, and the thorns shall grow over its stronghold, and nettles and fortresses. It shall be the haunt of jackals and the abode of ostriches. Wild cats shall meet there, and hyemans and goat demons shall call each other. There too Lilith shall repose to find a place to rest. So there is an owl, but there aren't scorpions or bats or eyeless beetles.
In spite of the fact that the list goes on longer than the list referred to when breaking out the holy hand grenade.
It doesn't point directly at what I hoped it would, so that's fine. Some ends are dead ends. How did we do, Darren? How do you feel?
Great. We did. Yeah? I think we dredged everything out of this that we could possibly be asked to dredge out of it, and it was really interesting and fun. And I think we hopefully we gave some fun ideas for meditation, and just inspired people to want to jump into some of this material themselves as well.
Cut this if we don't come up with an answer. Okay, I'm putting audio brackets around it, but just to try to put stitch up that one last thread. Did we learn anything about putting the daughter on the throne of the mother? How does that I agree with you that it's significant. It's mentioned explicitly a couple of times in this reading, and then the golden girl is explicitly a daughter and a princess and stuff. So it's important. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I'm still there as well. It's still in formulation, which I think is fine. We don't have to have an end point. It could be a continuous explosion. The tearing apart could well be a crushing together. But I think it's like I've gotten a lot more. And I feel like one of the biggest things, or two of the biggest things that I got out of this that I didn't really have associated with it before was, one, the real emphasis on that violence that constitutes, like it even says, chaos is peace. Mm-hmm. So it's like the equivalence of those two concepts. Chaos is peace. And that's important. It's like really emphasizing the violence that creates this kind of like this condition of peace.
Oh, so here's something that I kind of wanted to say that maybe we missed. So chaos is a very important Greek god in the theogony, specifically in the theogony of Hesiod. Chaos is the first thing, and then from chaos emanates these other couple of forces, and then those forces are the parents of everything else. And so I think the function that's being served in this text, it says this, the hexagram is the story of the white king and his black slave, and then we have this black god that has all these arms and is creating the universe to destroy it for his own pleasure. And then after that section, we have the introduction of chaos, and chaos is peace, and the universe will not be resolved into chaos until the scales are balanced. And so I think the function chaos is playing is the function of Abrasax, or the function of the Most High, or that center god out of which the treasury of light came, out of which the aeons came. Mm-hmm. Like I think the aspiration to chaos is the aspiration to not to the way we think of it now as being like violence and battle and disorder, but it says no, chaos is peace. We're thinking of chaos as being the deity, the primordial god Abrasax at the center of the Gnostic
That's
pantheon.
fun too, because it's like also there's a reference to this is also the first verse of Genesis.
Yeah, and it talks about how chaos did
chaos
this and
void.
this.
The world is chaos and void, and that's kind of fun too. Yeah, builds on that same idea.
Yeah, and so and there's an interpretation of the Torah used by some Gnostic groups that Elohim did this and Elohim did that. That's God creating, and then at some point, at some verse of Genesis, it becomes more the word Yod He Vav He, the word what is, Yod He Vav He, replaces the word Elohim as being the most popular word for God. And then also Adonai we say Adonai for Lord. And so like that there's the idea that Abrasax did one thing, and then the rest of this stuff is Yaldabaoth. Like when we see Yod He Vav He, we mean Yaldabaoth. When we see Elohim, we mean Abrasax. And so for the first verse of Genesis, that would be correct. It would be chaos doing those things.
Yeah, and I guess aside from that, there's also the idea that, just emphasizing, of course, placing the princess onto the throne of the mother, it's like it gives some emphasis of the fact that suddenly the princess ascends to a place of transrational existence, so it's now beyond. It gives some emphasis to that idea as well, which is nice.
It might be to do with what we were talking about, the earthquakes, right? Like if the daughter is creation, and there's a whole list of things that creation means in here, including rape and war and violence, and and we fall in love with creation and we cause those earthquakes, then placing the daughter on the throne of the mother is like restoring her to her place in the 13th aeon, or bringing her up to Bina, so that our experience of the world becomes an experience of transcendence rather than the experience of our material senses.
You could even like play with the idea that, she's sort of, if you symbolize her as salt, this solid thing, but then placing it in the great sea, it dissolves into it and that sort of thing. So there's fun stuff to do with that.
Yeah. Or so you can do it in the normal way by dissolving it into the water, or you can do it alchemically by adding mercury and making it take the sulfur, and so that gives us the two paths. Crowley doing the internal trembling versus everyone else suffering earthquakes.
Yeah, and that's kind of fun too. Just the as above, so below sort of aspect of Crowley undergoing this initiation, and it also has its reflection in the world itself and that. But the final thing that comes to mind is the emphasis on, like through that song, how we have that allusion to the idea of the palace of the princess is the princess herself, and by his initiation beyond past the abyss, and becoming a master of the temple, he is also seeding the princess, so to speak, and then that seed becomes VVVVV. So he's given up his previous, the rent garments of the into the abyss, the rent garments of his previous personality, and given seed to birth this new child.
Oh yeah, that's very good. Yeah, you're right. Cool.
So some fun stuff that we managed to sort of play around with, and that's some of the stuff that I got out of it. I don't know if if you can think of anything else that you see differently about the formula, or just from this new perspective on the other side of studying these two Aethers.
No, I think that's very good. There's in the song she's called the Virgin, and then we see her as the princess and the palace of the princess, and then later on the once we get deeper into the higher Aethers, that picture is complicated by the violence of the fourth Aether, but like there's the virginity is preserved because of things we talked about in Thelema, about how and the return of chaos will be the balance of everything. But then this thing about Crowley being his own offspring is really important too, right? Like the idea that this offspring is, what, say the name again? Exonion?
Oh, Ixion.
Ixion being both the parent of VVVVV, but also
so we have that symbolism of the father, the child and father of their love that we had in that refrain as well.
Yeah, so there's in Thelema, we always talk about the death and resurrection, right? We talked about how the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel was a death and resurrection, and that crossing the abyss is a death and resurrection. But now we have an insemination and self-rebirth.
Yeah.
No death, but just what the French call the little death.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, no, very good way to. I was just about to say very good way to end, but I have spoken for 10 minutes. Just cut me off.
All right. Well, that was really good. I think we did get a lot out of that, and it's kind of fun to be able to explore this because I wasn't sure how it was going to work out, to be honest with you. It's one of those ones where it's like, who knows how it'll actually flesh out when we try to have a conversation about it, but I'm always delightfully surprised at what we end up discovering through our conversations.
I have a friend who asks me what we're recording each month. Like, they're just like, hey, what are you reading right now? Just by way of making conversation. And so sometimes I can tell him and we can talk about it. And sometimes I say like, oh, it's just absolute nonsense.
Yeah, this is pretty much the same answer.
So I pulled the book out and I opened it and I started reading it to him so that he could get the character of the absolute nonsense. But everything I read to him, I understood.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, what's going on? I'm not supposed to understand any of this.
Nonsense. Yeah.
So no, it's so cool to have come around to a place of understanding something that I thought was impossible. Like,
yeah, that's a good point as well. That's something I was going to say earlier is that something that's standing out to me today is like usually we diverge so far in our interpretations of things. We did have a moment where I was like, I just had a mental aberration where I wasn't following your train of thought. But up until that point, I was pleasantly shocked by how you were catching things that I was catching and we were seeing the same things. Maybe that can potentially make for less interesting conversation as a result on mic, but it's like, I think that's kind of cool because it means that we're getting a lot out of the progressive discussions.
Yeah, we've read too much of the same stuff and we're becoming to the same person, Darren. We're going to need to diversify our...
Maybe we'll have a conversation
you read
on
Zorro
two different...
and I'll read the Man of La Mancha.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much as usual for joining me, and it was great having this discussion with you, Michael.
Love is the law, love under will.
Love is the law, love under will. Thanks for listening. Find Toronto Thelema online. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and help us grow. And join us again in the darkly splendid abodes.
Look at all these superfluous headphones. Which one is mine?
Choose wisely. It's an Indiana Jones reference.
The Holy Grail.
Yeah, the Last Crusade.
Yeah, the
Monty Python and the Last Crusade.
Indiana Jones, The Meaning of Life.
Indiana Jones and the Life of Brian.
Indiana Jones and something...
Indiana Jones and Dinsdale.
Indiana Jones and now for something completely different.
Can't remember exactly
Monty Python and the Crystal Skull. Which, just about.
Monty Python and the Dial of Destiny.
Is that one?
Yeah, that was the most recent Indiana Jones flop. They had... I haven't actually seen it, so I've only seen people's bitching about it.
Yeah, well, at some point you just got to give up. Everything we loved is dead, and the future is bleak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to Star Wars.
Star Wars. Mm-hmm. I forgot about Star Wars.
We can't include any of this for copyright reasons.
Oh, Christ.
But at least we won't have to pay the original recording fees. We can say we re-recorded it.
Yeah. Well, there's no lyric. You can't copyright a melody. There's no lyrics.
Oh, you can copyright a melody.
I cannot.
Well, not you.
I don't know how.
Not you because of your disability.